Hi, my name is Adriana and today I will be doing the 20 questions book tag. I was tagged in this tag by Lo from Literally Lo. I don't know who originally created this tag, but if I somehow track it down between now and editing, I will put it in the description box. I did do this tag about a year ago. Some of my answers are the same, some of them have changed. Let's get into it. We got a lot of questions to get through, and I don't want to be here forever. But before I jump into it, please consider liking and commenting on this video and subscribing to my channel if you like bookish things. Question number 1 is, how many books are too many in a series? I pretty much have the same answer as I did last time. In a sequential series, like one where you really do need to read one after another to understand the story, there's a big overarching plot, you need to know what's going on. 3 to 5 is kind of my max depending on how like chunky the books are. If the Poppy War had had any more than 3 books, it would have been a tough sell for me, but you know, stuff that's like middle grade or YA or like smaller books, 5 is about my limit there. I am a big fan of, I guess, more episodic big series. I love the Sigma Force from James Rowland's. I am slightly more into the Pendergast series, and those I think are like 16 to 20-ish books at this point in time. But because they're so episodic, I don't have to remember what happened in the past books to enjoy the current book. So that doesn't bug me, but like I said, if they are more serialized, 3 to 5. Question number 2 is, how do you feel about cliffhangers? I mean, obviously, if the next book is out, a cliffhanger is great. It gets you hooked and ready to like jump into the next book. If the next book is not out, cliffhangers are a huge pain. They're fun in theory. In actuality, they can be rather frustrating depending on whether or not the next book is out or whether or not you planned on jumping straight into the next book. But I don't know, they're kind of fun. I mean, it helps build hype if you're in like kind of a fan community and it ends on a cliffhanger. It's a good time. Question number 3 is hardback or paperback. I think my answer this time is a little bit different than last time. Last time I was just starting to like kind of get my shelves going. So I said I liked hardback for displaying. Now that I have shelves and I have them set up in a way I like, I really don't care if they're hardback or paperback as far as display. You can see down here, all of my James Rowland's are in mass market paperback. All of my Poppy War is in paperback. I think it looks fine. I don't think it really matters if you're displaying hardback or paperback. And as far as the actual reading experience, paperback is just so much better. It's so much better. I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but if I'm holding like a heavy book like in bed, my wrists will start to go asleep, which is why I generally prefer to read with my e-reader because it's super, super light and I have quite a bit more time before my wrists fall asleep. But paperbacks being that much lighter than hardbacks also helps in that situation. They just pack up easier. They look better when they're worn. I don't know if I have any worn hardback dust covers through here, but generally like a hardback dust cover, when it starts getting torn up and it just looks bad. It looks bad. Question number 4 is favorite book. Although I'm sure everybody who answered this tag gives you multiple books. Last time I answered Lovely War and Midnight Library. I stand by both of these picks. These are both excellent books. But I think I'm going to add another book, and that is Daughters of Sparta by Claire Haywood. This was just such an impeccably written story and really gave me so much more appreciation for the Trojan War that I did not really have before I read this book. I am so much more invested in that story now and have a deeper appreciation for Trojan War retellings since reading this book. I have already pre-ordered her next book that I am very excited about, so that might supplant this one if I ever do this tag again. But for now, I think that's a good top 3. The next question is least favorite book, and last year I answered Brave New World. That's still there, don't want to talk about it, but I again want to add one, and that is Daughter of Sparta. So you know, we got a little bit of balance in symbiosis here. This is a YA retelling of the Daphne and Apollo story in name only. I read this over Thanksgiving time frame last year, and I had high hopes for it at the beginning. The Daphne and Apollo story is something you don't really see done in these Greek mythology retellings. I thought it'd be a really cool and exciting new venue of retellings, and it's just bad. I have this in a vlog, so I'll link that somewhere if you want to see my more in-depth thoughts, but it is a James Patterson Presents, so it is very much geared towards a specific type of YA reader that I am just not anymore. I think if I had picked this up at like 14 or 15, I probably would have really enjoyed it, but just this whole girl bossification of Greek mythology was just not really my jam anymore, and I just didn't appreciate it and didn't enjoy it. Should have DNF'd it, did not, but I did unhaul it to a little free library, so hopefully it will eventually get to the correct reader. Question number 6 is love triangles, yes or no? I have the same answer as I did last year. I think yes in YA, young YA and middle grade, no in older YA, new adult/adult. I think when you're a kid, before your brain is cooked, love triangles make sense. When you're an adult with, you know, fully formed frontal cortex, reasoning abilities, love triangles don't make sense. Pick one, go with it, you're good. We're not doing love triangles as adults. Question number 7 is what is a book you could not finish? I don't DNF, so I go with a book that was difficult for me to finish. And I think the obvious answer for this one for me is American Prometheus. This is a biography of J. Robert Oppenheimer that the upcoming Oppenheimer movie is based on. My boyfriend and I are both pretty big history buffs, history fans, whatever you want to call it. So I thought this would be a fun audiobook for me to get for him for his birthday, and we could listen to it together. But this is 32 hours and it is dry. It starts from his upbringing in New York and goes all the way through to his death, and very in-depth all the way through. And the most exciting part for me was like, you know, Manhattan Project, developing the atomic bomb. That part was only like 4 hours of the 32 hours. There was like 10 hours of him fighting against the government as a suspected communist, and that's just not interesting to me at all. So definitely struggled with this one quite a bit. It took us like 7 months to get through it. It was also difficult because my boyfriend only listens at 1 times speed, so we had to listen to all 32 hours of this. Question number 8 is what book are you currently reading? I am currently reading Piranesi. I'm currently about 20 pages into Piranesi. From what I can tell so far, it is a man living in a labyrinth, and you are basically reading his journal. So this is kind of like his journal setup. So this is pretty fun. I'm really enjoying it so far. Like I said, only 20 pages in, so not a whole lot to say. And then this afternoon, I also just started Punch Me Up to the Gods, which is a memoir by Brian Bohm. This was a recommendation from my library for kind of a reading challenge they're doing called Pride 365, where they recommended like 12 LGBTQIA books to read over the next 12 months from like June 2022 through June 2023. So I am participating in that. I think I've read 3 of them so far. I think this will be my 4th one on their list. So I'm mostly keeping up. But I just started it this afternoon, so really don't know a whole lot about it yet, but it seems like it'll be fairly interesting. Talking about Black masculinity and intersecting that with being gay, so should be interesting. I hope to learn a lot. Question number 9 is what is the last book you recommended to someone? The last book I did was The Spanish Love Deception to my coworker, who is also a female engineer, so I thought she would appreciate that. So she has my copy, which is why I don't have my physical copy. Question number 10 is what is the oldest book you have read? And I have it right over here. That is 5,000 Miles Underground. It is so pretty, by Roy Rockwood. It is a steampunk sci-fi of a group of semi-related people traveling to the center of the earth through like this little blimp. They go through a hole. There's like some purple giant people. I haven't read it in many, many moons. I haven't read it since high school, I think, but it is so good. It is a good book for boys. So, you know, there's that. But it is copyrighted in 1908, and I'm assuming printed in 1908 because there's no other dates on here. So it is a very old book, over 100 years old, which is very cool. Question number 11 is, what is the newest book you've read? This book just came out a few days ago, but that is Ithaca by Claire North. I read an e-arc of it from NetGalley. I read it before it came out, but it came out a couple days ago. It is a Odyssey retelling from the perspective of Hera looking down onto Penelope maintaining the kingdom of Ithaca. Question number 12 is, what is your favorite author? I think I have to go with James Rollins just because I own almost all of his books. I have read many, many of his books. I have enjoyed them all immensely. So I gotta give him props there. But I think some people who could potentially get really close, but I just haven't quite read enough of their books yet to know, is Natalie Haynes and Jennifer Saint. I have read 2 books from each of them. Jennifer Saint only has 2 books, so I am caught up as far as her bibliography. But Natalie Haynes does have a pretty big backlist, so I should probably go back and read some of that to figure out if she is going to be one of my favorite authors. But I have pre-ordered Natalie Haynes' next book, and then as soon as Jennifer Saint announces her next book, I will also be pre-ordering that. These are both auto-buy authors for me going forward. The next question is buying or borrowing. I prefer to borrow a book from my library if I'm not sure if I'm going to enjoy it, but stuff like, I don't know, stuff that's like really, really intriguing to me, or something that's from an author I know I already really enjoy, I will just go ahead and buy. I think right now I'm about 50-50 on my buying versus borrowing. I borrow all my audiobooks except for like the one I bought for my boyfriend as a gift, just because audiobooks are so expensive. So I try to borrow all of my audiobooks from the library. I also borrow a lot of books from my parents. My parents will give me a lot of recommendations, so I borrow there as well. Question number 14 is, what is a book you hate that everyone else seems to love? I am typically more on the other side. I typically like books that a lot of other people don't like. I don't dislike a lot of books. I don't know if I'm just really good at kind of gauging beforehand whether or not I'm gonna like a book, but generally I like most of the books I read. The only one that kind of came up this year was through the Shelf This Book Club. It was called If Only I Could Tell You, I think it was. I'll put up a picture here so you can see it. But it is a family drama of kind of like these 2 sisters who become estranged, and their mom is dying of cancer and is trying to like bring them back together. I didn't really enjoy this one. I think most of the other people in my book club really enjoyed it. I just didn't vibe with me. I don't like dysfunctional sisters. I think I've talked about that a couple times on this channel, but it's just kind of a personal thing. I just don't really like reading about dysfunctional sibling relationships, especially dysfunctional like sister-sister relationships. That just wasn't really for me. It's not that I hate it, it just wasn't for me. Question number 15 is bookmarks or dog ears. I used to be kind of a dog ear person, but I have since become a bookmark person. I just seem to collect quite a few of them. They're easy to throw into the book and, you know, make it, they just lay real flat. When you like dog ear the book, sometimes the page doesn't like fold down all the way back, and especially on a hardback it can make it kind of like bulge up. Not as big of a deal on like paperbacks, but on hardbacks especially, I think it just kind of makes like the book lie weird. You know, you always get like free bookmarks whenever you buy books from a bookstore, so I just have many bookmarks floating around, I might as well use them. Question number 16 is, what is a book you could always reread? I am not a huge rereader, so I don't really reread a lot, but I am starting a reread of the Sigma Force series by James Rowlands. I really enjoyed the first part of that. I'm pretty bad about not remembering the plot of books, so realistically, any book I have enjoyed before, I could probably very easily reread. Question number 17 is, can you listen to music while reading? I tend to listen to music while reading and there's like other distractions around, or if my boyfriend and I are like driving somewhere and he's listening to like a podcast, I'll usually pop in like my headphones and like listen to music, because the talking of the podcast will distract me more than like the music will. I'm getting much better about reading with distractions, but it does definitely slow me down quite a bit. My preferred reading environment is just dead silence. I definitely prefer to read with no other sounds. Question number 18 is one POV or multiple. In general, I prefer multiple POVs, especially like journey fantasy with like a ragtag group of people. I think it's really fun to get to know all the characters deeper. In romance, I definitely prefer dual POV with both romantic leads. I just think it helps get to know the characters better, get to understand the story as a whole a lot better. Yeah, in general, I prefer multi-POV, but I'm not like upset if I pick up a single POV story. Question number 19 is, do you read books in one sitting or over multiple days? Over multiple days. I do not have the time to sit down and crank out a book in one sitting. I attempted to do that with James Rowland's newest release, Kingdom of Bones, and it still took me 2 days. So I don't have the, I guess, mental reading stamina to really crank out a whole book, as well as I work full-time and have a life outside of reading, so it doesn't really work out generally. And the last question is, who do you tag? I will tag MJ from This Reading Life, Kayla from Kayla Ray Reads, Ruby from Ruby Read, and Nat from Nerdy Nat Reads. I tried to do like a quick YouTube search to see if they've done this tag before, and I couldn't find it. I don't know if YouTube search function is super good or not. I don't know. But please let me know your answer to any of these questions. I really think this tag is a lot of fun, getting to know reading preferences and everything else. And thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.